These clips were taken at our class reunion in 2016. And as you can see, many of my classmates love to dance. Well, that only makes sense. We baby boomers came of age in the 1960s, the glory days of rock and roll. Have you heard the term dancing fools? Keep watching. It was, after all, the decade of the twist, the mashed potato, the frug, the Watusi, all the fad dances with the funny names. The formal ballroom dances and the Arthur Murray studios, in which many of our parents and grandparents learned them, were relics of a bygone day. For most teenagers in the 1960s, holding one's own on the dance floor didn't take much in the way of coordination or any special ability to memorize intricate footprint patterns across the floor. This had seemed clear to me as I watched the Lloyd Thaxton Hop on TV. Those clean-cut kids in front of the cameras made it look so easy. Somehow it was more complicated for me. I thought back to an after-school dance I attended the year before moving to Simi. I don't even remember the name of the girl who walked out on the dance floor with me that afternoon. We didn't have a live band, but someone was spinning 45s on a record player. I began wiggling around just the way I had seen the young people do on TV. My dance partner did the same and gave no indication she thought my moves were anything less than acceptable. About halfway through the record, several nearby classmates began pointing at me, making fun of my dancing. At first, I just dismissed their taunting. I took my dance partner by the hand and led her over to the other side of the dance floor. We began dancing again, and within a couple of minutes, a completely different group of onlookers began laughing at me. Feeling a rush of genuine embarrassment, I fled the dance and walked home. Once might have been a fluke, but being laughed at twice in one dance was crushing. I assumed there must be something wrong with me. "Come on, Ronnie, it'll be fun." I was standing in the kitchen, talking on the phone with Charlie Rodriguez. From where I stood at the back door, I could hear the sound of the rain rumbling on the patio roof. "It's pouring," I protested. "Are you sure the dance wasn't canceled?" "They're not going to cancel a dance just because of a little storm." I would hardly have called the storm little. It had been raining most of the week, and the month as a whole had been the second wettest November on record in Los Angeles. I stepped toward the darkened window over the sink, hoping for a look at the rain, but the cord from our wall-mounted phone didn't reach quite that far. "Don't you have to take a date?" I asked. "I'm not taking a date," Charlie said. "I just like to dance." "But that's just it," I said. "I don't know how to dance." "Well, you don't have to dance, but you can still have a good time just listening to the band and watching." I said nothing. "A lot of girls will be there," Charlie said. "Marlene, too." He knew I was sweet on Marlene. As my best friend, Charlie was one of the few people I had told about sending her carnations after the brush fire. "How do you know she'll be there?" "I was talking with her at lunch yesterday, and she said she was going. She asked me to save a dance for her, if I could get a ride." Knowing Marlene would be there changed the equation for me. She and I had never been on anything like a date, but she was the closest thing I had to a girlfriend. And Charlie was right. Even if I didn't dance, I thought Marlene and I could just sit and talk. "Just say yes," Charlie said, "and tell your mom I need a ride." "Well, I'll ask her and I'll call you back," I said, hanging up the phone. My mother was watching TV in the living room with my stepfather. I hoped she would say she was too tired to drive me over to the school, but she thought A dance sounded like a great idea for a rainy Saturday night. I remembered the dances when I was in high school, she said, crushing out her cigarette in the ashtray. I think you'll have a good time. Charlie needs a ride too, I said. I phoned Charlie back while my mother retrieved her purse from the bedroom. I didn't bother changing my clothes. I put on my jacket and pulled a plastic raincoat and an umbrella from my closet. Charlie's house was right on the way. He had been watching for us through his kitchen window, and he stepped out the front door as my mother pulled her car into his driveway. With his arm held against his brow to shield his face from the pelting rain, he darted out the front door and climbed into the back seat. The two wipers on my mother's Plymouth Valiant traced two wide arcs across the windshield as she slowly made her way through the rain-slicked streets. I watched the headlights of oncoming cars. When she reached the parking lot on the east side of the campus, she pulled her car as close as possible to the cafetorium. As I opened the car door, I could hear the sound of live music from the stage. As I reached down for my umbrella, Charlie leaned forward from the back seat, putting his hand on my shoulder. Lose the umbrella, Ronnie. You won't melt in a little rain, and you don't want to be lugging that thing around all night. Charlie was a model of diplomacy. He didn't say that I looked ridiculous. He didn't point out that I was the only student he had seen all that past week carrying an umbrella around the campus. Instead, he appealed to my sense of practicality, one less thing to carry. I decided to take his advice, leaving the umbrella on the car floor. As we entered, I saw a good-sized crowd of students inside. The overhead fluorescents had been switched off, but the bright lights from the stage cast a warm glow around the room. Folding chairs had been set up along 3 walls, but almost everybody was on their feet, and of course most of them were dancing. "Let's find Marlene," I said, and we began circling the multipurpose room, looking for her. As we made our way around the outer edge of the dance area, several female classmates called to Charlie, and he stopped to chat with 2 of them. He was a natural flirt, and I was often amazed to see how easily he attracted girls. Charlie's 2 friends were just stepping away when Marlene found us. The 3 of us stood and talked for a few minutes. We had to speak loudly to hear one another over the live music. I could feel the beat of the drum resonating in my chest. I heard the music change and realized that the band was starting a new number with a fast beat. As the drummer kicked into gear, Charlie reached for Marlene's hand, and the 2 of them walked directly into the crowd. Without thinking, I turned and followed them. It was only when they began dancing together that I realized how idiotic I looked, standing there watching them. I sheepishly walked to the row of folding chairs along the back wall. I took off my gray plastic raincoat and draped it over a chair. I sat there with 2 or 3 other wallflowers, alone in the crowd. Why is this so hard for me, I wondered. I hadn't yet been there 10 minutes, and already I was standing on the sidelines watching my classmates enjoying themselves. Why did dancing seem like such a natural thing for my friends, and such an impossibility for me? Sitting at the back of the cafetorium provided me a good view of the dancing. If any of my classmates were self-conscious about their moves, they certainly weren't letting it inhibit their dancing. One girl in particular seemed to be in an almost ecstatic state, her arms swaying rhythmically high over her head, every part of her body moving to the infectious beat of the music. The boy dancing with her was doing his best to keep up with her, but he seemed to be running out of steam. Perspiration dripped down his face, spattering the floor near his feet. After a few minutes, the band began another song. Charlie and Marlene walked back to the row of chairs where I was sitting. I think they sensed that I had embarrassed myself by following them out onto the dance floor. Charlie wiggled his index finger, motioning me to lean closer. "Anytime you see a boy and a girl walking out there," he said, pointing toward the dance floor, "it means they're going to dance." "I figured that out," I said. I wasn't angry with my friend for enjoying himself, but I was annoyed at the fact that my evening was turning out pretty much the way I imagined when Charlie had first suggested the dance. Unless you're studying the dating habits of American teenagers, a high school dance is not a very good place to sit on the sidelines and observe. Time hasn't done much to change my sense of awkwardness on the dance floor. I've come to recognize many of my natural gifts. Sadly, dancing is not one of them. And even now, 5 decades after that high school dance, my toes still don't twinkle. A friend of mine who teaches theater arts at a local college once shared an interesting rule of thumb he uses in casting his stage plays, particularly when someone who auditions fits the role but lacks some key ability that their character must demonstrate in the play. My friend told me, "If you can't fix it, feature it." Okay, what does that have to do with dancing? Well, I may not have learned to lighten up on the dance floor, but life has taught me that I really can play against typecasting and take on roles that push me out of my comfort zone. Sometimes. This happened in the late 1990s when I was working in the editorial department of a trade journal for mental health professionals. Here are a few of my fellow cast members. Claire Ginter, Linda Crawford, Rhonda Jones, Heidi Dewar, Ellen Diamond. There are 3 things you need to know. First, as you can see, I was the only male in the editorial department. All of my colleagues were lovely ladies. Secondly, the staff in the office, numbering about 60, took Halloween very seriously. Not only were we encouraged to come to work in costume, time was set aside for a parade through our central patio area. And thirdly, my department had an established tradition of dressing in themed costumes for a group entry. That year, we decided to do a parody of Riverdance.
Cool.
Flashing.
Love the camera, love the camera.
That was good.
Wait. You just push the button in the front and then push the button.
Where's Christine?
I think she's probably taking care of the dog.
Yeah, she took Shiloh for a walk.
Okay, please.